When viewed as sculptural artifacts stripped of their sacra, artists like Picasso and Klee, the left is a drawing by Klee, mistakenly interpreted the open-work lozenge bases of Kota works as the splayed legs of dancing or leaping figures. Originally, however, this passage was largely obscured as a site for the attachment of the packets of sacred matter that were positioned within basketry receptacles, like the work on the screen that is in a rare state of completeness on loan from the Quai Branly Museum in Paris, that was collected in 1897 by the French colonial official Charles Vital Roche. In this extraordinary shrine, a dense fringe of hide filaments cascade down from the rim of the woven vessel. As with Fang reliquaries, it is evident that the sculptural element is a relatively small visual accent within the overarching formal equation. This work reveals the intended effect of the figure as an ethereal presence positioned so that it appears to levitate just above the upper limits of its container. While the arms of Mbete figures are minimally rendered as raised ridges that frame the dominant torso, directly below the proportionally diminutive and yet powerful legs are distilled to sharply accentuated knees, broad muscular calves. It is as if the potency of the vital matter held within serves as a catalyst and call to action. In contrast, Congo reliquary traditions of soft sculpture address the viewer actively through the arrangement of the arms, while Bembe Muzidi, such as the work on the left, consistently adhere to a formula in which the figure is seated with legs extended before it. Bwende Nyombo, on the right, stand with outstretched arms and legs of equal length. Both genres share a distinctive body language of gestural signals that announce the ancestor's role as mediator who bridges two distinct realms of experience. The extension of the shoulders and arms as a horizon line delineates the threshold between life and death. Despite the bloated stiffness of Nyombo figures, derived from the accumulation of layer upon layer of textiles wrapped around a cane understructure, their expansive directional attitudes instill them with an essential liveliness. A pronounced aesthetic dimension of the region's reliquary sculpture, irrespective of medium, is an emphasis on lively surfaces that engage the eye and endow the representation with a degree of innate vitality. This is apparent in the changeable and shifting appearance of the luminous wood or metallic surfaces of Fang, Kota, or Mahongwe sculptural works. In each of these instances, the sculptural form is defined by and unveiled by the reflective play of light that continually animates and alters its appearance. The glistening quality of Fang sculpture is the product of applications of palm oil that has saturated the wood. Beyond its aesthetic effect, the oil is attributed curative and protective powers. The shimmering properties of Kota and Mahongwe representations was derived from the precious brass, copper, and iron metals that were pounded, cut, layered, and sized, artfully combined, and applied to the wood understructure to enhance its preciousness. This luster was actively revived through periodic scouring with sand and identified with the reflective play of light on the surface of water, a metaphor for the threshold into an ancestral realm. The delicately laid wire filaments that sheathe the exterior of Mahongwe works, such as the one on the screen, create a subtly textured metallic tapestry. The brilliance of this armature is a metaphor for the ability to deflect and obliterate antisocial forces and is associated with extrasensory powers of perception. Another strategy for stimulating the eye, mentioned previously, consisted of the use of red, a color that is regionally identified with ritual transformation. This is manifest in applied fiery copper highlights, vibrant pigments, or contrasting patterns of textiles that favor a red palette. Wrapping ancestral relics within costly fabric commemorative imagery referenced related practices of shrouding the bodies of elites. While Bwende artists harnessed imported trade blankets that were reddened, Bembe artists drew upon a wider range of industrially manufactured prints that were skillfully combined. Equatorial sculptural evocations of an ancestral presence emphasized an idealized physical presence that integrates complementary opposites within an emphatically bilaterally symmetrical structure. This was originally apparent in Fang reliquary ensembles through male and female figural pairings that were disrupted once the shrines were dismantled. It also informs the composition of the body on a number of different levels. James Fernandez has noted that the physiognomy depicted by Fang sculptors synthesizes a highly developed muscular adult body and the proportionally large scale of the head associated with infancy. More recently, Karen Kleiman, our final speaker of the day, has proposed that we may discern in these representations efforts by regional artists to pay tribute both to the influential original pygmy settlers of the rainforest and an extended family's founding ancestors. The Fang sculptural record is striking for the lengths to which artists strove to reconcile complementary opposites and advance an ideal of balance, bipwe, tranquility, moe, and harmony, mvoe. This is manifest in the formal definition of the commanding couple from Harvard's collection. In this dynamic, bilaterally symmetrical pairing, strategic deviations define the figures as distinct from their partners. The overall scale of the female figure is slightly more petite than that of her male counterpart. At the summit of these representations, pronounced contrasts become apparent at the level of the chin. While both figures have nearly identical wide open oval mouths that expose sharp-filed teeth, a beard extends from that of the male figure, whose neck is also broader and significantly longer. Further down, definition of his pectorals contrasts with the female's pronounced conical breasts. The male torso is narrower and more attenuated than the fuller, more volumetric female trunk. Finally, both figures similarly hold their arms at their sides with elbows bent, the presence of their progeny as a horizontal element that extends across the male figure's center deviates notably from the corresponding void between the female's clenched fists. In a contemporaneous creation by another Fang master, a female protagonist faces forward and grasps the calves of the miniature figure seated upon her shoulders that looks over the summit of her head. The author deliberately emphasizes formal parallels through rendering the smaller figure in the image of the larger one and aligning their gazes while introducing the significant disparity of their relative scales. In both these Fang masterpieces, the disjunction of otherwise symmetrical pairings visually focuses attention on the nature of the relationship between lineage founders and their progeny. Among the Kota, the same dialectic between ancestors and their living descendants is also evoked through representations that adhere to principles of bilateral symmetry. In many works, this is exactingly delineated through pronounced median axes that are accentuated in vivid contrasting tones, as seen in the bold red copper stripe that bisects these examples. As noted previously, these forms are also defined internally by an alternation of convex and concave surfaces that may be apparent in the shift from the rounded forehead to the scooped-out passage of the face, and ultimately the stark juxtaposition of the fullness of the head and the negative lozenge of the body.